Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the host of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. No matter where you are in the world, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes of your day to hear my thoughts. As always, we have a great show for you today. Now, here are our topics. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. I am joined here today by our friend Lloyd. How are you doing today, Lloyd?
I am doing wonderful. I am happy to be here. It's a good day. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I wanted to bring you on the podcast today because you were telling me before that you were interested in starting your own podcast about politics. Is that right?
That is correct. I honestly, you are sort of the the pillar of my thought here. I see you do podcasts. I sort of pull inspiration from you, and I thought, you know what, maybe I can do something in that avenue as well. You know what you're talking about, and I think that the world needs more minds like that.
Hey, man, I really appreciate it. It's one of those things where I feel like it definitely is a process that's always better when you have great guests on. So I'm glad that you could come on today. I mean, what is the thing that interests you the most about politics? Like, why do you want to start a podcast about that subject?
I think the subject of politics is misleading because I think it should be about life, right? Like politics are life in most cases. Most things that you vote on are issues that affect you in every way. Down to speeding, abortion. Name a subject. It is something that is a fundamental part of most people's lives, and I think that sort of gets lost in the sauce here. Like we think of politics nowadays as let's avoid it, let's try to be civil. Well, the reality is like maybe we want to be more confrontational about these things. Maybe we want to bring them more to the spotlight. Maybe we want to talk about them because they are issues that affect people. Like I said, gay marriage was illegal until 2015, I believe, or don't quote me on that, but
it was 2013,
but 2013, yeah, pretty close, right? So I think like that's an issue. Like if you're a gay man in America, that's a big issue, or woman, or whoever. That's a big issue for you, and I'm sure in 2012, before it was illegal, people would still say the same thing. Politics should be quiet. Well, that didn't work, so we have to be loud about some of these things to get them, more of a I don't know, maybe more understanding, and maybe we can pass this barrier where we are afraid to talk about politics because we assume that there's some foreign, off in the distance thing, when we should be focusing on them because they are in our face now. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. There are so many things going on in the world right now, with coronavirus, with, like anti-mask protests, with Black Lives Matter protests, with people talking about their rights being taken away, with people trying to figure out how they're going to make rent the next week. I mean, there's so many issues going on right now. If you had to say, what is one of the issues that, let's just say, what is the issue that you think is the most controversial at the moment?
The most controversial, I think without question, is coronavirus, right? I think the response to it, maybe this is an American thing. In most countries, they don't have this opinion likely, but in America, people don't even believe it exists, right? People think it's a conspiracy. People think that, maybe it's because we have these freedoms. We've been such a free nation. We don't have to wear masks. Most countries force masks, and their citizens say that's acceptable. In America, You say wear a mask, people say my freedom, right? And I get that. That's an understandable thing. When you have freedom, freedom's great. I don't think anyone would argue that freedom isn't an absolutely awesome thing. But I think coronavirus being, is really the most controversial thing ever, in my lifetime, probably. Honestly, I don't know of anything else that has been shut down work. Has it's been so reaching. So I think without question, coronavirus is easily the most controversial thing, and I don't know why we should be shutting it down, but
okay. So Lloyd, tell the people at home who are listening who don't know who you are, where do you live at in the country? Because I like to always have people have some kind of perspective about where people are at in the country when they come on this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in a pretty red state, I would say. Maybe I'm wrong, but I live in Montana. I'm in the good old big north right here. I live in Great Falls, Montana. Great Falls
Okay.
being one of the larger cities in Montana, and it's a pretty red place, right? I think our industry is driven largely by military. We have oil and gas production, a refinery and a hospital. I mean, there's not a lot else here, and so you run into a lot of conservative types, right? Military support here is high. Your support for the oil and gas industry is high. We're pretty much Trump country in this state. We've voted, Trump. We voted Republican the majority of our elections, the vast majority of our elections. So, that's kind of where I hail from, and it is kind of nice being. I would say I'm more of a libertarian, being more of a libertarian inside of a red state, because I really do get to. I guess go against the grain. I get to hear a lot of opinions. People really tell you how they feel when you disagree with them, right?
Right.
So it's kind of nice.
Okay, and being a conservative, well, being living in a conservative place, like Great Falls, Montana, what has the reaction to coronavirus been like in a place like Great Falls, Montana?
Great Falls, Montana, honestly, I would say we're one of the luckiest places in the world, right? Montana in general, right? We've had so little coronavirus cases because if everyone know, we're the fourth largest state land-wise, but I believe we're third or second for population. We're just so spread out. It's harder to contract the coronavirus here. So even if people are out there being stupid, you're just less likely to get it here. And we've seen that in the numbers, right? We've been pretty lucky. And so people are pretty lackadaisical here. You do have a lot of people that, when they go into stores, they do wear their masks. We've seen it more and more since our governor, C. Bullock, has instituted a mandate to wear masks, but still, the coronavirus rate here is so low that it really hasn't been. Most of our reaction is from like global, right, or national. We see the response in New York and Florida and wherever, California now, right? That's kind of where we get our we look at, because we don't really have a strong coronavirus outbreak here. It's just not a thing we really deal with. So
No, so I also live in Montana for the viewers, for the listeners listening, wherever you're at around the country. I live in Missoula, Montana, though, so it's a very different situation over here. This is kind of like the blue star in the red state. Missoula is a very liberal place, so there's pretty big mask supports over here in Missoula. But I'm just wondering what it would be like being over in Great Falls. Do people think of it more as being like a hoax over there? Do people take it seriously? Or are they just doing what they're told? What's the general vibe when you talk to people at your job or around the town, or what?
I think the general vibe is that the coronavirus is real. It's dangerous. And I mean, it's a virus that can kill you, and it's especially dangerous to the vulnerable. And I think that people sort of understand their civic duty to wear a mask, or at least social distance. Again, the good news is, in a state with so little people, even in a city like Great Falls, the third largest, I believe, currently.
Third largest, yes.
Yeah, we have 60,000, 55,000 people. We already social distance. It's just not something we didn't do already, So, like I said, we've been super lucky, and that spills to everything. As a state, we have a low. Out of the state, we have a place like Billings, but we've had low police violence. That's something we've kind of missed on the national radar. Coronavirus, the environment, our air is clean because the Rocky Mountains and the wind and stuff, and we have fires here and there. But healthcare, we've pretty much dodged every national headline there is, mostly. And I think that we're pretty lucky, and coronavirus is really no exception, where it's hard to give you a real put the finger on the pulse, because it's just such a it's a minuscule issue, really. Most issues are minuscule here, and we just don't really it's not something you talk to your people you see at Walmart about.
Right. That's fair. I mean, so you want to start a podcast stuff about politics. So when you do start this podcast, what exactly are the topics that you want to dive into? Once you're the host of the show, you're the creator, you get to develop everything. What kind of flavor can people expect from you?
Well, I would poach your style almost completely, right? I think politics to me is life. It's not just a thing. It's the overarching theme of everything. I think everything can be boiled down to politics, whether it be sports. Sports is still politics. You could do transgender and athletes. That's something that's political. Steroid usage, drug usage, that's political. That could be a part of sports. You name a topic, it can be political. So I would say politics, but to be more specific, I think that the divisive politics are sort of what I would target. Things like third party. I'm more of a libertarian myself. I think that third party opinions is something we could target, or issues like abortion, issues like gun rights, issues like the environment. It's an issue we've been forgetting about since this coronavirus thing has happened. We've sort of put the environment on the back burner, right? Those sort of things that are truly divisive. And sometimes I don't know why they're divisive, because the environment affects all of us. Why would you not care about pollution? I just don't understand that. So I would want to bring issues like that to the forefront, and I would sort of focus on that. I'll use abortion as the best example, right? I'm pretty pro-choice. I don't know if anyone knows. I don't want to get any backlash here. I think that a woman should be allowed to have an abortion, and I think that because I don't want the government to regulate a woman's body, because I don't want the government to regulate my body, right? And that's a pretty divisive thing, Okay. I want the government to have less power on other people because I want them to have less power on myself. And so I think we can cover things like that and those kind of opinions as a little sample. I think that's going to be sort of the focus of my podcast, if I do get to the level you're at, obviously.
Okay. Well, I would love to know, like, do you have pretty strong opinions about the presidential race that's happening this year between Joe Biden and Donald Trump?
I do. Like I said, as a libertarian, you would think usually people kind of equate libertarian to, closet Republican or closet conservative, and that's not true. That's just not true, right? I think that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, let's go ahead and save that. We're gonna take a quick break, but we'll be right back, and I'm gonna pick some more of your thoughts about the presidential race. Hey there, Indie Thought listeners. Just want to tell you today about one of our sponsors, and that sponsor is Anchor, the program that I'm using right now to create a podcast. Now, we searched all over for different ways to make podcasts, and we decided on Anchor. There's lots of great things to know about them if you ever want to decide that you want to do a podcast. And why shouldn't you? Get your voice out there, make your voice heard. I'm sure that everyone feels a little intimidated at first when they're thinking about, should I start a podcast? But basically, it's just a conversation that you're having, just recorded. Nothing intimidating about it, and Anchor's the best place to start. It's easy, it's free. There are certain tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer or your tablet. I'm on a tablet right now. And Anchor will distribute your podcast to all the best places, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, a whole lot of them. You can make money from your podcast too, with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in a one-stop shop. Definitely check out Anchor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Again, the app is free. You can download it to any phone or go to their website, anchor.fm. Welcome back from break, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. I am still joined here with Lloyd. And before the break, we were talking about the presidential election between old man number one versus old man number two. And Lloyd, I have semi-touched on my feelings about Joe Biden and Donald Trump on this podcast so far. I've mostly kept it pretty quick and constrained, but there is plenty to be said. But today, you're my guest. I'm going to let you have the floor first. Tell me just your overall feelings about the election, your feelings on Joe Biden, your feelings on Donald Trump, them facing each other. Like, tell me, how do you feel about this whole thing?
I want to say I think it's a travesty that, in a country of 360 million people or so, however many people we have here, that our two choices end up being two 70-plus-year-old senile, possible sexual predator men, right? This is what happens. Is this really a free country? I don't know if that's like a thing. So I would say, if you're a reasonable person, no one would have picked these two to be the candidates in any reasonable world. And I think that you should take that into the election. Know that like you don't have to just vote for two people. There are other options. Your vote is never wasted. If you vote for a third party, a Green Party, Libertarian, understand that that's a vote for Libertarian. It's not a vote for Donald Trump. It's if you vote for someone else, you're not voting for Joe Biden. Don't let anyone fool you into thinking that. But I would say that though, in a year like 2020, after we've seen the response to the coronavirus, we've seen what can happen when you have, I would say, a fairly incompetent leader. During a good times, they make weak men. I think that's sort of what we see here. I'm not voting for Joe Biden, but I don't see how you pick Donald Trump over Joe Biden in this situation, because we have a businessman who's pretty clearly shown that that's all he does is run a business. That doesn't help you in coronavirus. It doesn't help the environment. It doesn't help transgender rights. It doesn't help healthcare. There's a plethora of things that a businessman is not equipped to handle, and I think we're seeing that now. So, again, I'm by no means endorsing Joe Biden, but you see the place we're in now. This is because we've elected an incompetent leader in Donald Trump, and I think that if you do go to the polls, just remember that. Remember that. Yeah, this is what happens when you elect a reality TV star as a president. So,
a lot of people will say, and I've heard the defenders come out. They'll say that Trump was doing great things for the country. The economy was great, blah, 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 blah. And then coronavirus hit, and no one in the world could have predicted this, and he's handling it the best that he can. Like, what do you say to that criticism?
I think it's completely fictional. I think that no one could have seen it coming. That's false. And there's a popular video of Obama saying we need to put, infrastructure in place to handle these sort of, Spanish flu type epidemics or pandemics, whatever you want to call them. That's false. A leader who has a mindset of a leader who actually understands there's more than one issue than just business. Money isn't the only thing on the plate, right? He could have handled this. I think anyone with a political mindset could. I think even Mike Pence could have handled this. Have the vice president won the election. Not going to happen. It's fictional, but that he would have had a better response because he understands. He's an actual political mind. He has a leadership mentality. Even though I disagree with him on pretty much everything, where there's anyone else for the job, right? That criticism is fictional. Every other country in the world has handled it better. Even China. I know China's not the shining example of human rights, and we probably shouldn't take their reporting all that seriously since they are essentially one of the last communist nations, and their leader is pretty, they're pretty vice down there. But they have reduced their, infection rates. Other countries have begun doing sporting events again. We 100% could have handled it better. There's no reason we had the opposite bell curve where the cases spiked. We didn't do a good job. Maybe it's because we are the freest country in the world and people are free to make bad decisions. And I love that, but maybe that's the reason why. But I think any other leader, insert any leader in the world pretty much, aside from some third world countries or, close to, would have handled this pandemic better than the current administration.
Okay. Yeah, I have a hard time with this one because I'm under the belief that anyone would have looked bad trying to handle this. But I feel like for me, I was, if you listen to my previous episode that I have talking about Joe Biden, I had said at the end of that episode that I wasn't convinced that I was going to vote for Joe Biden because I thought he was a clown. And I changed my opinion about a few days after I released that episode. It had literally nothing to do with Joe Biden. It had everything to do with Donald Trump and just seeing his continual reaction to what's been going on with coronavirus, what's been going on with these protests, how he's been fueling fires of people's skepticism and promoting conspiracy theories. And, I feel like I was watching the primaries go on, Lloyd. All right. And I saw Bernie Sanders get trounced by Joe Biden. And one of the theories that came up was maybe Bernie's support wasn't as strong as people thought it was last time. Maybe he was getting a lot of anti-Hillary support. And I can't help but feel like maybe that same thing was also true for Donald Trump. That maybe Trump didn't have as big of a following as he thought that he did. Maybe he was getting a lot of anti-Hillary support. And I am under the belief now where, like, I don't want to just sit back and just wonder that so much. Because last time I didn't vote for Hillary because I was just like, oh, I don't need to vote for her. She's going to win anyway. This time I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, not because I like Joe Biden, because I am just done with Donald Trump. And I just want to see him go away permanently. I don't want to see him back on the political stage again. Like, he needs to be out as president. He has absolutely just embarrassed our country as far as like a president is concerned. And I feel like at every chance where he had the chance to be an adult, he chose to be a child. And I just can't sit back and watch it anymore. I really can't. I just can't do it. And I don't even like Joe Biden. I really don't. The second that Joe Biden gets into the White House, if he gets in the White House, I'll already be upset. Okay? Because I don't fucking like the guy. But Donald Trump needs to go. That's my take on it. You know, so
okay,
that's where I'm at on this situation. I just feel as though Trump has embarrassed us, and he could have been a leader in several different spots, and he has just chosen to consistently just play the blame game, say that nothing's ever his fault, just like act like a child, fuel like every single like conspiracy he could think of, and just never ever step up to the moment. Like, everything is someone else's fault always, and I'm over it. I'm done with the guy. So
I think that's logical. I think most Americans would agree with you. The conspiracies, right? He tweets just infactual data all the time. It's just completely untrue. There's nothing true about it, right? Like, and he has conspiracies. There's just no proof. He has no evidence to these conspiracies, and
yes.
I think the majority of Americans agree with you. I think he already lost the popular vote, right? And I don't want to hold that against him. We do have an electoral college for a reason, whatever. That's another conversation. But I do understand that, like, yes, you know, just because California likes Hillary Clinton doesn't mean that she should win the election. But for Trump to lose the popular vote by 3 million, whatever it was,
votes,
it was preposterous. And to know that, like, the consequences of really young voters not voting, right? People not voting. That was a big part of it.
That is a stupidly huge part of it. And it's honestly one of those things that upsets me more than anything.
And really, like, I think you touched on it, right? Like you said, like, you don't like Joe Biden, but hey, a vote, if you're not going to vote, then you're basically saying that you're complacent with anything that happens going forward. And if that happens to be Donald Trump, that's a bad thing, right? I guess, you know, devil's advocate here, I don't necessarily agree with this opinion, but, you know, the other side of the coin is, like, let's say Joe Biden does win. Joe Biden is not the progressive candidate that I would support, right? I'm an Andrew Yang guy, personally. I love the idea of a UBI. I love the idea of, like, thorium as a nuclear substitute for nuclear power. I think that's a step in the right direction. I think he would be a candidate that we really embrace. I don't think we're ready to vote for him, but I think it's a great platform. And I think, like, Bernie Sanders too. As a libertarian, I would support some sort of universal health care as one of the few basic functions of the government, because what we have now is just not working, right? It just doesn't work. So, like I said, Joe Biden is sort of the antithesis of that. He's the opposite of that. He said he doesn't support a universal, you know, income. He doesn't support healthcare, universal healthcare. He doesn't support. There's so many progressive ideas he just does not support. He's essentially an establishment. He's the establishment, right? That's really what he is. And so I think, like, is it? I'm gonna hate myself for saying this, but is it so bad to have 4 more years of Trump to wreck everything? He's already wrecking shit, but to wreck the world and then have a better candidate come out of it? Because if we get Biden as a candidate now, he's the incumbent. He's probably going to win again, and he's 80. What is he? 76.
Well,
I just don't know. I want the country in the hands of a 76-year-old pervert. Like, you see the way he sniffs people. Do we want that? Is that what we want? Is it better to just wait 4 more years until a better candidate comes along and just deal with the sore on our butt cheek now? I don't know.
I think. Well, here's what I would say. I think on one hand, Biden has come out and basically told a lot of people that he probably wouldn't even run for re-election. So whoever he picks as his VP, which he plans on making that decision in the next week or two, that person would probably just become president in his like third year of office. It almost sounds like he would step down, allow that person who he already said would be a woman to take his place and become the first female president, and she would run for re-election in 2024.
Isn't that pandering, though? Isn't that pandering to win? Like, do you think the first woman president should be because they're the vice president of a 77-year-old? No, I think it should be a person who wins on their moral. I hope the country recognizes that women are ready to lead. They're ready to be in office. I hope it's not a decision because the vice president chose you. The first black president, female too. Like they said, it's going to be a person of color, right? To me, that's just pandering.
I don't know if it's going to be a person of color, but it's definitely going to be a woman. He said
it's going to be
much.
A woman, right? Kamala Harris. There's a couple of people. Amy Klobuchar was one. I think she's out actually, but
Elizabeth Warren's in
Warren
there.
Was one. It's to me that is such a gimmick, and to me that's so pandering. I'm not a woman. I can't speak for women across the country. It feels like pandering to me, like to be the first woman president because you're vice president. You were the vice president of someone who beat Donald Trump, a historically unpopular president. Like you on no way won on your merits. You just kind of inherited. It just sounds so pandering and immoral. You know, I would vote for someone like Tulsi Gabbard. I'm a Tulsi Gabbard fan. You know.
Yeah.
As a vice president, then becomes president. What is that? I don't know what that is. That's just that screams perversion to me, and I'm not comfortable with that. And so that's one of the gripes I have with Joe Biden is if you're going to pick someone as a vice president, pick someone who's qualified. Don't just pick a woman. That's just not how the process works. So you shouldn't just pick someone because they're a woman. Like that's silly.
But thankfully, at the same, to also play a little back and forth here, there's also to be said there's plenty of women who are qualified. So it's not. I mean, while it is pandering, let's not like mince words here. It definitely is pandering. It is also the fact of the matter that there have been plenty of women over the years who were always qualified, but always got overlooked because they were women. So now women who are qualified are being chosen because they're women. And yes, it's pandering, but it's also about time. And with that being said, even furthermore, if Biden did step down in his third year and allow whomever he picked to take his place and then run in 2024, that woman would then have the potential to then run and then be elected. And then she would also be the first elected woman president on her own, leading the ticket anyway.
That sort of sounds like what's her face? Kylie Jenner being the first female billionaire, right? The youngest billionaire. The Head Start. Yeah. No. It was the youngest billionaire, right? There was something that kind of right. Yeah. She made like $1 billion off of her makeup line and all that stuff, right? And where did she start though? It wasn't like she was a Kardashian. She was in that scene. It wasn't like she just like, all right, I'm going to be a self-made billionaire. And that was the title they gave her, self-made. It sounds so perverted to call her a self-made billionaire in the same sense that it's like, all right, well, even if a woman that was vice president when Joe Biden steps down wins the election, like you were chosen as a vice president against Trump, who was just a garbage candidate in general. You won that battle. That was a low hanging fruit. And then I don't know who they run against, but it just seems so. Maybe that's what politics is. Maybe that's what I'm missing here. That's the whole theme of politics. This is the game of it. But it just seems like that is such a gerrymandered way to get into office as the first female president. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm not a woman. I don't want to speak for women everywhere, but it seems so. If that's the support you need to get to be the first female president, man, that is a steam incline. But I would also concede that you're right. Females have been, historically, disenfranchised from politics and just positions of leadership in general. And I wouldn't be against it. I'm not going to say that I would be against it. Joe Biden just really gets on my nerves, and this is another reason why it brings it out. I don't know what to do. Vote gold, guys. Vote Jo Jorgensen, the first actual female president. That's my candidate of choice.
People really talk about voting for third parties like it's a waste of a vote. I disagree with that. I think it's very situational. And I'm sure that a lot of people think about these things from their own lenses. And what I mean by that is, like, if you live in the state of like Indiana or Florida or Texas or Pennsylvania, Arizona, I'm naming right now swing states. And so for people who live in swing states, your vote actually is more powerful than my vote will ever be, unfortunately. That's just the fact of the matter. Like your state actually has a chance of going red or blue. So every vote does matter in those states. But
Must be nice. Must be
yeah,
nice.
and in all red states and all blue states, that's not really the reality for us. Like our state, Montana's going to go red. Like that's the end of it. I know that right now. I don't need to wait until November 3rd to see the results. I know that right now. And I also know that California is going blue. I know that right now. I don't need to
Yep.
see the election results,
Yep.
okay? So, with that being said, one of the unknown things that I feel like most people don't actually know is that the third parties, if they are able to amass 5% of the national vote, they then are qualified to get federal funding to be in better positions for future elections. Now, to date, no third party has ever gotten 5% of the vote. Libertarians have come close a few times, but they've never gotten the 5% mark.
Wasn't there Ross Perot?
He ran as an independent.
Didn't he get like a lot of the vote though? Didn't he get more than 5%?
He did, but he ran as an independent.
Oh, that's third part. Oh, yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Excuse me. Sorry.
Right.
Continue.
So the third parties, typically the ones that we know of in America that have gotten the most notoriety, the Green Party and the Libertarians, I feel like the country as a whole would be better off if we had more political parties. But unfortunately, we're never going to get there if we're always told that we have to vote Republican or we have to vote Democrat. There are plenty of people who live in all blue or all red states who could throw some votes at these third parties and help them get to that 5% threshold mark so that we can have a better situation moving forward. That's my take on it.
I think that's a very logical take on it. I think most people would agree that everyone you talk to is always like, oh, I'm an independent, right? Everyone says that. They go to the booth and they vote Democrat or Republican, right? That's kind of how it works. Everyone claims to be independent until it's time to vote, right? But the best argument I can make is like if you had a choice between, let's say, Jo Jorgensen, we'll use her as an example. She's a libertarian candidate currently. If you had to vote between Jo Jorgensen and Donald Trump, I think even the most progressive Democrat would vote for Jo Jorgensen. Like it's not a question about it, right? And so, it proves that the candidate on itself, there's some laurel there. There's some meat there, right? Because you would vote if it was anyone but Trump, right? You would vote for that, George. I think even like if it was just Joe Biden versus Jo Jorgensen, I think you still see a large part of the vote go to Jo Jorgensen. But I think that because there's three parties and we know of the two, that 1% and 2%, 3%, whatever it is, falls to the gold, right? And I think like that if there was a better argument, if there was a best argument, that's the argument. Like you would vote for them if your candidate wasn't there. You would definitely would. And so that tells you that candidate's worth voting for. So don't buy into the your vote is a wasted vote, because it's not a wasted vote. You're free to vote. It's a free country. That's the greatness of this country. It's a bad thing sometimes because people don't wear masks, but it's a great thing, So exercise that freedom, and eventually your voice can be heard. If you don't want your voice heard, vote for the candidate you're told to vote for. If you want your voice heard, vote for the person you want to vote for based on their merit, right? Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah. So, Lloyd, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Before we get out of here, I want to just open up the floor to you a little bit. When do you think that you want to start your podcast so that we can, because I think we're going to want to have you come back on here so you can promote, tell us what your name's going to be, where to find you, so on and so forth. But just for future reference, do you think you have an idea of when you'd want to start your podcast? Sometime in the next month or sooner, later? What do you think?
Yeah, it's gonna be quick, guys. It's gonna be probably real soon. If you're listening to this and you are a believer in what he's preaching, come on over, man. Like you can be a voice. I want to hear your voice soon, real soon. Less than a month, likely. Once all my equipment gets in and my little studio gets set up, it's pretty much halfway there now. Join the ship. I promise you. I will try my best to be a regular guest here, if possible. This is his discretion, obviously. But if you're hearing this and you are a fan of his podcast, come on over. Maybe the audiences don't are parallel, but hey, I think you're going to find something you like here. And worst case scenario, you can have your voice heard as long as you're not a complete brainwashed person. We'll find time for you. I promise. Any viewer, any listener, anywhere, I promise you. I want to hear what you got to say. We can get this country fixed. I promise.
All right. Well, Lloyd, thanks for coming on the podcast today. Lloyd will be back on in the future once, like we have some more information about his podcast and where you will be able to find it. Thanks as always for tuning in today, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, everyone. That is our show for today. I want to thank you all for checking out Indie Thought. Independent Thought is brought to you by your host, Desmond Price. You can follow us on Twitter at Independent Thought or at Indie, I-N-D-E, Thought. So, again, thank you all for coming and hanging out with me. For those of you who found me on iTunes or on Spotify, please go ahead and subscribe to us. Give us a 5-star rating. If you give us a 4-star rating, I'm inclined to think you're a hater. So don't hate. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you all next time.